uh, an hour or so after the meetup. So an email that is got a set of links that are curated and selected by our organizers to help you grow in your tech leadership journey. So if you're interested in further growth and learning about tech leadership related content, related content more frequently actually. So at least once a day, there'll be some relate to tech leadership content to help you learn and grow in during leadership journey. We also announce future events on Twitter. So if you are someone who uses Twitter quite a bit, if you want to follow on and know what's coming up, you can follow us on Twitter. Offers in one of our sponsors offers is giving you a chance to win some swag. So you can win a t-shirt from Offers in. I will share a link to the form you need to fill in to be entered into the draw to potentially win this t-shirt. And I think before I get to the last slide, which is the speaker introduction, just want to get to the sponsors one, which I skipped. Just want to say thank you to our sponsors, Peach Payments, Offers in, and Root. Without them, we wouldn't be able to host events like this, and especially our in-person ones where we gather people together and have snacks and everything, and drinks. So thanks to these companies for supporting our community. If you're interested in knowing what these companies do, please feel free to go and visit their websites and check them out. But the tech leadership community really appreciates the support we get from Peach Payments Office and Root. And finally, the exciting part, our speaker for today is Merissa. So I first met Merissa through DevConf, where we were both speakers earlier this year. And I was very excited when I reached out to her on LinkedIn to ask if she would be keen to come and share a talk around engineering leadership with us as a tech leadership community. And she gladly decided to join us. So excited to have her today. She'll be talking about dealing with burnout as a tech leader. So from here, I'll hand over the screen to her. I'll just stop sharing, and Merissa, the talk is yours.
Cool. Yeah, thanks to Naka and your team for giving me this opportunity. I'm really excited to be sharing with you guys. So just gonna find the correct screen here and start sharing. And there we go. I think it's coming through correctly. So I'm gonna get started. Cool. Yeah. So today I want to talk about burnout. Sorry, I need to click on this thing here to start my talk. And specifically burnout as a leader, a team lead, and how we deal with it, firstly with ourselves, and then secondly, how we can help our teams to deal with burnout. Before we get started, I wanted to include a little disclaimer. I am not, so firstly, if you're here seeking all the answers, I'm afraid you'll leave disappointed because I don't have all the answers yet. What I do have is a passion for shedding light on this pressing issue of burnout and a willingness to share my personal experiences with it. So I think something I've learned in my journey is that burnout is complex and it's individualized. So people experience things differently, and what works for one person may not necessarily work for the next. While I'll provide insights and strategies, it's essential to remember that I'm not a medical professional. And if you or a loved one are showing signs of burnout, please seek medical help. Your well being is paramount, and professional guidance is often a crucial step towards the recovery journey. Yeah, so let's embark on this exploration together, understanding that we will learn and grow, but we may not have all the answers. But I do think that together we can work towards creating a healthier, more supportive environment for ourselves and our teams. So setting the stage, just to get expectations straight, I'll not be focusing on textbook definitions or medical jargon or or theory overload. That's really not my kind of vibe. Instead, what I like to do in my talks is to focus on personal experience. So I am going to tell you guys my story, how I burnt out, and just take you through that journey, go through the nitty-gritties, the stuff that was not quite fun. And then in doing this, I will highlight key questions that I asked myself and give you time to reflect on these questions in your life. So we'll also highlight lessons learned, and I'll provide some practical advice. On that note, after I just told you that I'm not going to go into definitions, I would like to start with a definition. I promise that it's the only definition that I'm going to go through, and that is the definition of burnout. So, burnout is a state of emotional and physical and mental exhaustion resulting from prolonged and intense stress, often characterized by feelings of cynicism, detachment, and a reduced sense of accomplishment in one's work or responsibilities. So I'd like to focus on two crucial elements of this definition. The fact that burnout stems from prolonged and intense stress, which is more about the individual's perception of their work being stressful rather than actual and solely the actual workload. And then the second part of the definition I'd like to highlight here is that it's marked by feelings of cynicism, detachment, and a diminished sense of accomplishment. Here, it's vital to note that it's about the individual's perception again of diminished accomplishments, not necessarily their actual achievements. In essence, burnout revolves around a person's perception of their situation. And this implies that individuals can experience burnout under various workloads and in entirely different contexts. So it's all about how they perceive and internalize their circumstances, something that I wanted to highlight before we got into my story. So, Merissa Badenhorst, a case study about my life. I, as a child, grew up, and I did use sort of stock images for all of my slides. Yeah, excuse the imagery there. It's just to keep you interested. And then as I grew up, I was always overachieving. And now this might seem like a humble brag, but it is a crucial part to the rest of my story. I would get rewarded for achieving high marks, so a gold star, trophy, a book prize. And I do think that this is pretty normal. Society tends to award or reward for achievements, like especially in terms of grades. And yeah, so what happened is this led to me having an ever increasing need to do more and to be better, because that was what I was rewarded for, or how I got praise. And so throughout school and high school, I always worked towards higher marks and tended to ignore the social aspects of my life. I still did sports, but purely because they were compulsory at my school. So yeah, just when I was a kid, I worked a lot at my studies. When I reached varsity, the stakes got higher, so the work got harder, obviously, and the hours required to pass my degree in the minimum time got more and more. Sports were no longer compulsory, so I just stopped doing them altogether, and yeah, I ended up becoming pretty unhealthy. It was very normal for me to go to class from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., get home, eat something unhealthy, like 2-minute meals or takeout, and then just continue studying. I often spent many nights studying throughout the night and not sleeping. However, I got my distinctions and I was rewarded for that. So I was encouraged to keep up the hard work, and it was seen as impressive. Um, as soon as I finished my undergraduate degree, I landed my first job as a junior software engineer. And I was absolutely stoked. I mean, I had dreamed about being a software engineer for a long, long time. So this was the ultimate achievement for me. And again, the fact that I had completely neglected certain aspects of my life and put all of my energy into my studies had paid off and been rewarded. So, I mean, it was great up until this point. So, I apologize for the crude little drawings here. I did not really, I'm not an artist. I just like put the to represent the energy levels and the time that we have available. And I thought it would be cute to have it as a little person there. Up to this point in my life, work-life balance had always looked something like this. So mostly work with a bit of off time at the end of each day, some weekends to take care of myself, eat food, sleep enough, replenish some of that used up energy that I used, during studies and so on. I was still pretty happy. Work was going well. I didn't feel too bad or tired at the end of my days. I was achieving my goals. So this was pretty balanced still. It was pretty cool. But then life happened. I got engaged and married and started climbing the, so to speak, corporate ladder. The company I work at currently still started as a startup. So it wasn't really a corporate ladder, but maybe just like improving my career or growing in my career rather. So I got a couple of raises and I started taking on some new responsibilities. And I introduced my beautiful daughter into the world in 2022. She is my everything. She turned my world upside down. At first, I thought, I could just continue being the ambitious, overworking employee that I've always been. My career has always been the most important thing to me. And yeah, I only took 2 months of maternity leave. And at times, I even continued working while I was on a maternity. So I thought, it wouldn't change that much. It wouldn't change things that much. That was the idea, rather at least. However, yeah, soon my days started feeling like this. It seemed that somehow I could just never get everything done. My daughter never slept through the night, and I always laughed at people who told me sleep when the baby sleeps, because no, I work when the baby sleeps. I had to use the time when she was sleeping to catch up on work tasks that had been left untouched during the day. And so yeah, this is what I was trying to do. I tried to keep up the same pace of work, as well as do everything that life demanded from me as a new wife and parent. Instead of trying to balance things out, I simply used time that I used to spend caring for myself to deal with life and its requirements from me. So self-care got reduced to the bare necessities at this point. So a shower, eating, sometimes sleeping, but yeah, often not nearly enough sleep. At this point, I knew I was struggling. You feel it when you're not sleeping, not taking enough time to replenish those energy levels. But I just got in the promotion. I just became a team lead, and it was something that I always wanted. So I pushed really hard for the promotion as well. And I didn't want to show weakness. I wanted my bosses to know that they've made the right decision. I still wanted to impress them. So the workload increased and I wanted to keep up with everything. I didn't want to show, weakness in delegating responsibilities. And I never said no to new projects or requests. I always put my hand up for anything the company needed. So assisting with company events, helping out with recruitment, that sort of thing. And when you accept everything onto your plate, eventually you start having to work overtime. And I did work quite a bit of overtime. During the late nights and early mornings while my daughter was sleeping, I did start doing that because that's what team leads do. And eventually, this is where I ended up. Self care had been reduced to 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, maybe showering every third night. And saying that out loud feels terrible. How could I let it get to that point? But everything else was work or dealing with life duties. I am sure you all have a pretty good idea of where this is going. things started to go wrong. I started getting headaches and I got sick more frequently to the point where I had used up all of my sick leave for my 3 year cycle, which had never happened before. I was tired 100% of the time. Now, I know a lot of this is because of not sleeping when I should have slept. I used the excuse that my daughter wasn't sleeping, but a lot of the time she was. And I was just, using it as an excuse. I felt overwhelmed and that nobody could possibly understand what I was going through. Um, and I felt like I wasn't achieving anything and I doubted my abilities. I started feeling demotivated. I started dreading getting out of bed in the morning. I mean, this, yeah, it just didn't seem like a fun thing to do to have to get up and work. And then I started feeling like it didn't matter anyways. Like if I got out of bed on, not or not, would it even make a difference? Um, I started making mistakes at work, committing, the wrong thing, merging a merge request without reviewing it, that kind of thing. And then, yeah, leading to problems in production. It happened, started happening more frequently as well. I started procrastinating on even the simplest tasks because, I just didn't want to deal with stuff anymore. And I started getting agitated and irritable because I was tired. And since I had to keep it professional at work, I often took it out at home, which was not fair. And I didn't have the energy to deal with anything, let alone people. So I ended up pushing away friends and family. And then one day I broke. I had a meltdown. I cried. I phoned my boss and I cried. I mean, I told him I couldn't handle things anymore. And I was so tired and overwhelmed. And his answer to me was that it sounded that I was burnt out and that I needed to take a break, which I did. So I took 2 weeks off and it did do wonders. I came back feeling refreshed and energized. And I thought that it was all over. I was back to my old self. Um, However, I got drained so fast after coming back. It wasn't even 2 weeks after being back that I had felt as bad, if not even worse than before. And one night I was complaining about this to one of my close friends who's actually on the call. So shout out to him for supporting me. He knows he is. Um, he said something that opened my eyes. He said that you can't fix burnout with just a break. You need to address the underlying causes that got you there in the first place, or you'll just get burnt out again and again. So I realized that I needed to learn about burnout. I needed to identify the real issues and I needed to address them individually. And I did what we all do when we need to learn about stuff. I Googled it, and it seems that Google's favorite answer to how to deal with burnout was don't get burned out. There's a lot of information out there about preventing burnout, but very little on how to get out of burnout once you've actually already burnt out. And the reason for this, and we'll talk about it again later, is that once you reach that point of burnout, unfortunately, you're going to need um, attention from a medical professional. So maybe a therapist, maybe a life coach, but we'll get into that. Before I got to that point where I reached out to a medical professional, I decided to ask myself specific questions to try and find answers in those specific areas about my burnout. I started with the basic interrogative words and used these to sort of guide my search for answers. And the first question I started with was, what were the warning signs? Is there a way that I could have identified warning signs in my own behavior that could lead me to a burnout? Um, when did it happen? So we know when I melted down, but when did the first signs appear? When did things actually start going wrong? Why did it happen? I needed to know why I ended up having a meltdown when other colleagues did not. We do the same job, so why did it happen to me? And then finally, I wanted to know how I could have avoided the situation. What could I have done differently? So the next couple of slides are going to answer those questions, and it's all about recognizing your own burnout. And I think that's such an important skill to have, is just to be able to identify your own warning signs that might be leading to burnout. So I consulted Google again and Udemy, and I found the following warning signs of an approaching burnout. The first one is excessive hard work, and so the focus here is excessive. So people who tend to work excessively hard and have a hard time to take a break from work are at risk of burning themselves out. Then overtime, so this one links back to excessive hard work, but is specifically focused on working hard for longer than normal each day. Controlling behavior, so people who feel the need to control every aspect of their work. The expression, if you want it done right, do it yourself, comes to mind. These people are at risk of putting too many things on their plate, and that can eventually lead to burnout as well. Self-doubting behavior, people who doubt that they are achieving enough or performing their jobs well enough, or just that they are a valuable part of their companies, are at risk of trying too hard to prove their value. Often by putting in overtime and excessive hard work. So we know that can lead to burnout as well. Then ignoring the physical warning signs. So our bodies unfortunately don't have a check engine light like our cars, which we often ignore as well. So they warn us about stress overload in other ways, increased heart rates, physical aches and pains, headaches, increased illness, and oftentimes people who ignore these signals are at risk of a burnout. And then people who ignore their own needs, people who constantly put their own needs second in order to put work first are at risk of a burnout. These people tend to cut out important aspects of their lives, like exercise. And you'll often hear the excuse, I don't have time to gym because I have too much work to do. Intrinsically saying that work is more important than exercise. And then, people who have all these other things might start feeling overwhelmed and powerless. So here you're starting to get towards actually being burnt out, but you can still stop it if you recognize it here. So oftentimes people who have put in too much on their plate and don't know how to, or maybe don't even want to ask for help, start feeling overwhelmed and powerless. Then again, starting to move towards a burnout, when you start becoming easily angered or frustrated, you start withdrawing from others. You might have frequent illnesses and maybe uncharacteristic changes in behavior. So you might be someone who always has high caliber work, and then you start making mistakes. Or maybe you're a bubbly person and all of a sudden you start becoming more cynical. That could be also an indicator of an approaching burnout. So upon reflecting on my journey, it becomes apparent that I had many of these warning signs before I actually burnt out. My check engine light was on for a long time and I ignored it. So I'd like to use this moment to encourage you to use this time to check your check engine light. Is it on? Have you been ignoring it for a while? If so, there's no time like the present. Even a small adjustment now could save you from a full burnout. When did it begin? So signs that a burnout has started. When do you know that you've moved from warning signs to an actual burnout? There is a nice Udemy course that I did that explained all of these signs, and I will link it at the end of my slides as well. I highly encourage you to go and have a look at that if you are interested in learning more about burnout. The first one is a noticeable lack of empathy up to the point of cynicism. So people who are burnt out can often appear cynical about their work or life in general. Uh, this could some sorry, my dog almost pulled off my laptop. This could be surprising sometimes when these people may have been previously bubbly or happy. Um, those affected by burnout can start accusing fellow persons of taking advantage of them. So at this point, any request seems overwhelming to the person affected by burnout. And people in this stage could lash out when you ask them something seemingly simple, even when it's well within the realms of normal, the thing that you're asking them to do. Social withdrawal, we've mentioned quite a few times, and isolation from friends, family, and I've mentioned it as well. So, burnt out people are too exhausted to do anything. Even to talk to a friend or a family member may seem like just too much effort, so they tend to avoid it. And then fast exhaustion. So something like a sporting activity, or it's just often way too exhausting once you've started burning out. Which makes it worse when someone tells you to get more exercise because you already feel too overwhelmed to just go through life, not even to mention to exercise. So it might even make you feel guilty that you're getting this tired that fast. And then this one as well, negligence and self-care. We've mentioned it before, but it can become pretty bad. And I think that working from home has perpetuated the problem. You can get away with more when you work from home. Showering every third day, eating junk food, or just, eating for survival, not actually eating for nutrition, that kind of thing. And then not sleeping anywhere nearly enough. It becomes the norm when you're burnt out. And then chronic fatigue, even if you get sleep, you are still feeling tired after getting enough sleep. This is often because you are not getting restful sleep. When you are sleeping, you are constantly worried and constantly having this huge battle going on in your mind, that you cannot actually rest when you're sleeping. And then finally, I mean, even the smallest everyday activities appear unmanageable. Going to the shops to buy bread and milk just feels like such a drain, like so much effort. Why would you even do that? That kind of thing, that kind of thinking starts becoming apparent in people who are burnt out. And then at this stage, it's critical to consider seeking support. You can begin by talking to a healthcare professional, a therapist, a life coach. Um, if the idea of reaching out to a professional feels overwhelming, which is entirely understandable because like I felt the same way, maybe just consider starting a conversation with a friend. I think that just talking about it is the first step towards proper recovery in this case. Um, and then I just wanted to say, like, it's important to emphasize that trying to navigate your way out of a burnout on your own is like attempting self-surgery while watching YouTube videos, um, you know, to learn how to do the surgery. It might theoretically work, but the chances of success are slim. So in my personal experience, my journey towards recovery from burnout truly only began when I reached out to others for help. And we collectively started working on finding a solution. Eventually, I also sought the guidance of a life coach, which has made a world of a difference. And yeah, just remember that you don't have to go through this alone, and you're also not the only one going through this. There is a support system out there for you. So seek it out. It will be a significant step towards healing. And yeah, I think I also want to use this time to give you a moment right now to go through these signs and think about it. Are you showing any of these signs? And if you are, maybe start thinking about who you want to reach out to start that recovery journey. Then the question was why? Why did it happen to me? Why did it not happen to my colleagues? And again, on that Udemy course, quite a lengthy course, I learned about this idea of burnout risky beliefs and traits that absolutely resonated with me. Um, so, a burnout risky trait or belief refers to a positive or strong characteristic that an employer may even look for when hiring a candidate. However, when these traits exceed what is healthy, it can lead to a burnout. So that makes it a burnout risky trait or belief. So the first one of these is an identity or identifying as an achiever and a problem solver. So you can already see how that's a positive trait, right? We want achievers, we want problem solvers. But when someone identifies entirely as an achiever and a problem solver, they tend to become workaholics, overly committed, and they have this idea that if you work enough, you can solve anything. And this just try harder mentality, which, if you take it to the extreme, can lead to an inability to let go of things, an inability to accept failure. Sometimes we fail, but these kinds of people just cannot accept that, and they'll keep working until they don't fail, which can land them up in the hospital. Helper syndrome. So we all, again, you can see how someone who is helpful might seem good, but if you land in a position where you're always helping, always putting your hand up, even when maybe you don't even know how to help this person, but you're not going to say no. So you're always saying yes. In reality, you just haven't learned how to say no when it's important to say no. They tend to not ask for support, and even if they're offered support, they tend to be reluctant to accept it, since if you accept support, you're not good enough on your own. Perfectionism, again, perfectionism maybe not as obvious as the others, but we want people who pay attention to details and put a lot of effort into their work. So you might see a perfectionist as a good trait. But if you are perfectionistic to the extreme, you have this belief that there's always something to improve, and you can start struggling with prioritizing things. Since everything must be perfect, then everything needs the same amount of time to be made perfect. So that can lead to overworking. Then the belief that performance is rewarded. So the belief that so we do in society reward performance, but the moment where you start believing that the only way that you can be rewarded is by performing, and the only good thing that you can do in your life is overachieving, you start leading to a burnout risky trait or belief. So you always thinking that you need to achieve as much as possible and be as successful as possible, because then you get the praise, then you get the money, the recognition, the promotion, and that's the only way you can get those things. And consequently, that means that you just cannot be mediocre. Being average is just not acceptable. People need to be liked, so it might seem positive, to want to be liked by everyone. But if you want to be liked by everyone, you tend to have to agree with everyone all the time. The moment you have to agree with everyone all the time, you end up having to bend on things that you believe. You might have to let go of your intrinsic beliefs, and that in itself can be exhausting, and lead you to burnout. And then people who have profession as a purpose in life. So this one is a little bit more obvious, but if your profession is your purpose in life, then your work problems become existential problems and not just work problems. You land in this space where you'll give everything or anything for work, relationships, life goals, for your own health. And burnout is just not allowed because it's a sign of weakness. So that can definitely be a burnout risky trait. So yeah, again, after reflecting, I realized I held many of these burnout risky traits, and I definitely stuck with them beyond what was healthy for me. And I again want to encourage you to take a moment and to think about your traits and just ask yourself whether you are letting your beliefs interfere with your health, and is it worth it? How could I have avoided it? How could we have, prevented this whole burnout situation? Um, and yeah, funnily enough, one of the answers to preventing burnout is getting enough restful time in and recovering after periods of high stress. It seems simple enough, but it often is very difficult to take a break due to external and internal factors. External factors like companies don't actually encourage many short breaks, even though studies have shown that multiple shorter breaks work better than a long one. You often get a 1 hour lunch break, and you have to stick with that. Internally, it could be really hard for you to take or to make your breaks worthwhile if you're worried about work. I often see people going on holiday with their laptops and their cell phones and like constantly doing stuff, you checking emails, that kind of thing. And if you go on if you take a break and you don't rest, in that break, the break sort of becomes null and void. And then so this one, yeah, it can become very difficult to understand or to do actually to apply to your life. But it is important to take longer breaks after intense periods of work. So I understand in our lives, sometimes there's migrations, there's big project deadlines that we have to reach, and we just cannot take a longer break in that moment, which is fine. I think that we need to normalize that, we don't have to work 100% at 100% all of the time. So sometimes consistency is working at 20% for the day. Maybe last night you worked a lot of overtime and today you're taking it easy. And that's good. That's a better way of doing things. Whereas you could people who end up burnt out will work overtime, the night before, and then during the next day work full on and work overtime again. So the key is you can work overtime, you can work hard, but you have to take sufficient breaks in time. Then setting realistic goals and defining expectations. So this one was something that I really struggled with when I became a team lead. So as a team lead, the type of work you do is it's so different to what you did when you were just a software engineer. You can no longer measure your productivity in lines of code. And so in not finding a way to measure your productivity, you end up always feeling like you haven't done enough for the day. And not having that cut-off point to your day can result in this intrinsic need to keep working until it feels like you've done enough. So definitely defining a clear goal for your day can help to provide an out to the workday. At first, I wasn't sure how to do this as a lead. So I reached out to my manager and he mentioned that I needed to take stock of my daily achievements and learn to see non-programming tasks as work done too. So since then, I've focused on ways to measure my productivity. I take 10 minutes before the end of my workday to think about what I had accomplished. And that included things like helping people on my team, client meetings, demos, that kind of thing. And then identifying the real expectations of your role is also important. So it helped me to talk to my manager about what his expectations of me were. Turns out in my case, I had set much higher expectations for myself than he had. My expectations were really not sustainable, to be honest, and I wasn't meeting my own expectations, which made me feel like a failure and made me feel overwhelmed. And as soon as I talked to my manager about these expectations, I realized that I needed to be kinder to myself. Then learning to say no to things that don't align with your goals and expectations is essential in making the most of your journey. So it's a way to protect your own time and energy for what truly matters. We need to learn how to say no. I'm not going to go into SMART goals too much here, but it is something that you can go and have a look at. We learned about it at school, but yeah, it really helps to make your goals feel more achievable when you set them in this way. Take care of yourself. Now, this one to me is the most important one, and out of all of these that I've mentioned. When you get on an airplane and the air hostesses give you the safety briefing, they'll always tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before assisting others. And this thought sort of pops up when I think about self-care. We tend to become so busy taking care of everyone else, the team, the clients, the spouse, the kids, that at the end of the day, we leave ourselves so little time. Um, mm, we, I'm not going to say each of these, but I want to I want you to just look at these as they pop up. These really are things that you should not be letting go of for work. Um, your health is more important than your work, and we really need to think about it that way. I don't want to get too philosophical here, but if you had to imagine yourself as a house plant in your garden, what would you look like? Would you be withering away, parched for care? Um, or would you be blooming and healthy? And just think about that for a second. If you are the little plant on the left, what can you do to start taking better care of yourself? So now that we've delved into the topic of burnout and its impact on ourselves, let's shift our focus to how our roles as leaders can affect our teams. The significance of this matter became glaringly evident one morning when a junior team member approached me, expressing their struggle with burnout. It was a wake-up call for me because I realized that until that moment, I had been setting the wrong example. I had been overworking, neglecting self-care, and ironically being receiving recognition for these efforts. So it struck me profoundly that I now wielded influence over the actions of others. You know, people look up to you as a lead. And I felt a deep sense of remorse for the negative impact my actions had on their life. So I really think that it's very important for us as leads to focus on how we can prevent burnout in our teams. And a lot of these will link back to what you can do to prevent burnout in yourself. Um, you as a lead can set realistic expectations for your team. Ensure that their workloads and deadlines are reasonable and achievable. Take into account their skills and capacity and avoid piling on excessive tasks or pushing for constant overtime. Promote work-life balance. Live work-life balance out. Be the role model here, and you can do this by just a simple thing that I've started doing is respecting boundaries. I don't send work-related messages after hours, and I don't send or answer any work-related stuff when I go on vacations. You can encourage your team members to do the same. So if you do find in the morning when you start work that a junior sends you a message maybe at 12 o'clock at night, have a quick chat with them and say, I appreciate your dedication to the job, but I would rather have you use this time to replenish your energy sources, rest, and then work when you're well rested. You can have a quick chat with them and encourage them to respect boundaries. Foster open communication. So when you create an environment where team members feel comfortable with discussing their work challenges and stresses, things start getting easier for them. And in the same vein, something I really wanted to mention here is that we need to start destigmatizing discussions around stresses and challenges by openly sharing our own experiences. An important observation I've made is that leaders often refrain from discussing their own difficulties with their junior team members. And it leads to this causing inadvertently this harmful cycle where juniors never witness their leaders facing challenges. And it creates the impression that leaders have everything perfectly under control. And I remember thinking that when I was a junior looking up at my lead, I thought, I want to be that guy because he has everything under control. But when these juniors then ascend to leadership roles and inevitably encounter difficulties, they might internalize the struggles. They might start believing something is wrong with them, which in turn would discourage them from opening up about their own challenges because they fear appearing vulnerable. So yeah, just think about it. Silence leads to a lack of communication about struggles, and then you lose a valuable opportunity for mutual learning from each other's experiences. So definitely, let's start destigmatizing the talking about struggles as a lead. We can try to distribute work equitably, so we can ensure that tasks and responsibilities are distributed fairly amongst our team members, taking into account their skills and strengths. We can provide resources and support. So this one you might need help with, but as a lead, you can contact other departments. So talk to HR and try to help your team where possible. Part of our role as a lead is to upskill our juniors. And something I want to mention here is that we shouldn't just focus on upskilling their technical abilities. Think about how you can help your juniors to upskill their soft skills and the skills that they might eventually use to prevent burnout in themselves. By implementing these measures, team leads can contribute to a healthier and more sustainable work environment, reducing the risk of burnout in their team members. Then another thing that I think is important as a lead is to bust the burnout myth in dispelling common misconceptions about burnout within your team. You will knowledge is a powerful tool, and that a team that is well informed about burnout will be better equipped to recognize its signs and take swift action when it arises. The first myth that we need to dispel or debunk is that burnout comes from too much work. And we've mentioned this before, burnout actually arises from one's perspective and inner stresses that's more than simply the quantity of tasks that we have. It's about how we perceive it and manage stress in the workplace. The second one is that burnout is a sign of weakness. And the truth here is burnout isn't a sign of weakness at all. It often results from unhealthy stress management and can affect anyone, regardless of strengths or weaknesses. And it's more a reflection of the work environment of coping mechanisms. And then myth number 3 is important because we think that burnout is characterized by fatigue or depression, but the truth is that when fatigue or depression sets in, burnout is actually often already at an advanced stage. There are actually many other signs that we've talked about that appear before fatigue and depression. So knowing these signs can help you to recognize burnout in time before it becomes a problem. Then we've mentioned fostering open communication. I just wanted to add a slide on how do we foster open communication within our teams. We can schedule regular check-ins. So I do this with my team. We have regular one-on-one meetings in which we discuss, their workloads, their challenges, and their well-being. And in these meetings, I often talk about my challenges as well. So maybe it would be a challenge that I'm currently facing, or even a challenge that I faced when I was at that stage, at the same stage where my junior is. Apply active listening. I cannot stop talking about how important active listening is. Pay close attention to what your team members are saying during meetings and one-on-ones. Be empathetic, validate their feelings, encourage them to open up about their struggles. Have transparent expectations, so clearly communicate expectations, deadlines, project goals, and ensure that team members understand their roles and responsibilities to reduce ambiguity. And then, have this feedback culture. So encourage constructive feedback within the team, promote a culture where team members can provide input, share ideas, express concerns. With conflict resolution, address conflicts and issues promptly and objectively, encourage team members to discuss and resolve conflicts amongst themselves, and step in as a mentor when necessary to ensure conflicts don't escalate and contribute to burnout. Then finally, some tools and resources I used in my journey. There's an app for that. So there are apps along, and I mean, you can really just go and search for these. There are meditation and mindfulness apps like Headspace. I use Headspace, it's really cool. Calm, Insight Timer. They have guided meditation sessions. They teach you about mindfulness, that kind of thing. You can have stress tracking apps. There's apps like Dailyo, iMood Journal, that kind of thing. They can help you to identify potential burnout triggers. Time management and productivity tools. So you can use tools like Todoist, Trello, or Notion. Can help you organize tasks, set priorities, manage your workload efficiently, and that will reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed. There are self-care apps and health apps by the dozens. I mean, MyFitnessPal, there's Sleep Cycle apps. Just try them. Journaling apps, you can use them to journal your thoughts and feelings. I often find that just writing something down, getting it out, already makes me feel better about it. And then this is the Udemy course that I mentioned earlier. So you can go and have a look at that. It is called, I think I forgot to put the name in there, but it is about dealing with burnout in teams. And then finally, I can highly recommend getting a life coach. So a life coach has really helped me to organize what is important in my life, and to work towards that. And that is it. I know that we are at 7 o'clock. We did start a couple of minutes late. So if you would like to ask some questions, there are a couple of minutes for that now.
Thank you, Merissa, for joining us and sharing such an important topic. Especially a topic that's often overlooked in an industry that at times prioritizes results and continued production of those results without considering the impact on people. And I really like that you spoke openly from your own experiences and were willing to share them with us. And that, I think, helps with solidifying the lesson and helping to teach us to be better at these things, both as leads and in our own lives. Thank you so much once again. In terms of questions, I think there were there may have been some of them are comments. The one question was around, as a team lead, what actions can you take to help ensure your team members never end up in a burnout situation? Although that popped up before, you had a whole section on it. So I don't know if you want to add anything else, or you sort of covered it there. The rest on the, go ahead.
I'm just gonna comment on it. So I did have a section on how you can prevent your team from getting there. The sad answer is that you cannot completely and utterly eradicate burnout. Burnout is gonna pop up, and it happens because it is a personal experience, and people can experience it in any condition. You cannot control that. But like in my section that I discussed, we can do things like have clear boundaries, and model the behavior that will prevent burnout. And the other thing that we can do is just talk. I think talking does a lot. And so if you notice the burnout, risky behaviors in a team member, if you see maybe a sign of an approaching burnout in a team member, maybe just talk to them. Grab a cup of coffee and just start the conversation, because I often feel like if we just talk about stuff, we can solve problems much easier.
Cool. No, thank you so much. Thank you for for also adding on to the answer there. All right, yeah, I think we'll get ready for closing off now. Merissa, thank you so much. As Benny mentioned at the start of the talk to you, we as Tech Leadership traditionally gift our speakers a book of their choice, just as a token of appreciation for coming to spend their time and sharing your knowledge with us. That book is sponsored by Benny's company, Matchbox Solutions. So you'll be in touch about what book you want to get and send it through to you. Would also want to thank our sponsors once again, Peach Payments, Root, and OfferZen, for supporting our community and allowing us to host these events. And thank you to everyone who attended today. The next one will be in person, as we always rotate from in-person to online ones. So the next one will be in person, and we'll send out the details as usual on the Meetup platform. But else, thank you everyone, and have a good evening.
Oh, thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Merissa.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Cheers.